Hey, hey. Yeah, you know what time it is. You already know what time it is. About to start saying words, speech and whatnot. Yeah, speech. 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 Talk to him. Talk to him. I'm so glad that the sun is hitting right now, cause I caught some wind. I caught some wind from my window, and the cold last night. That was not. Hold up a second. That was not it, man. That cold was not the wave. All right, so you still here? Yeah, don't go nowhere. All right, but sit down. You know, strap in. Gonna make you some tea or something. I ain't really rushing this time. We just knocking things down, you know. How long was that silent just now? Because I just lit something, right? How long was that silence? Like what? 5 seconds? 5 seconds is enough to have someone tune out of a video and continue scrolling. What did they tell you to do about this? What is the prescribed solution for the fact that attention is harder to grab? See, again, another silence. The prescribed solution for attention being harder to grab is to make things shorter and quicker to the point. So everything's sped up now. Put a pin in what I just said. Pay attention, if you're in America, pay attention to the way, or recall the way in which art has been transforming, and take note of what's underneath that. Art has been transforming, especially if you know about anime and how anime has been influenced by America. I personally don't like where that's going. However, I'm to stay on track outside of my personal opinions that don't really have universal application. I know for a fact that there is an agenda, and that specific agenda requires making things faster, making things less dense with substance. Things mean less now than they ever have before in the realms of art, where all the depth is supposed to be. In the realms of art, where all the depth, all the substance, all the feeling, all the magnetism, all the repulsion, in that realm, in that domain, there is a lowering of the standard to the point to where it's evident that things are being done in a way to get to the point. And when you rush things to get to the point, now we're seeing all these reflections of people missing the point. So this agenda has been implemented, and we're like in a pilot season right now. And already, I don't know if you can tell, we're losing the plot. So make it make sense. You made things quicker so you can get to the plot quicker, but your orientation to shave things down so much remove the plot that you were trying to get to quicker. It's almost as if the definition for getting to a place quicker is to destroy the actual work of getting to that place. If I'm destroying the work to get to the place that I'm trying to get to, then how can I say that I'm getting there? How is that possible? It's not. It's not possible. I am one of the new adults. I need to speak because incompetence is on the rise. The sloth, that sloth spirit, it's rampant now, and that's a weird words to combine, like a rampant sloth. That doesn't usually go together. Usually, yeah, you wouldn't think about a rampant sloth like a sloth just being on a rampage, but that's what the spirit of the sloth is doing. This one is called the standard, the boundary. Okay, so I just opened up with a little freestyle, talking about anime and whatnot. But this is again greater implications on society and the way that we connect with each other. When you tell people who know better that they don't have to do better, you tell people who know better to set a lesser example of what normal is for the people who don't know better. So now I have a question for all of you supposed intellectual revolutionaries who are doing the right thing. I just have a question. What does capitalism, which is an economic sort of structure, have to do with your human behavioral tendencies? And I'm gonna let a gap flow in between that question. What does capitalism have to do with your priorities, your habits, your convictions, what you allow? Guess what? Capitalism, as a term that's been floating around, is a scapegoat term. It's a label. I already did a video on the label. I already did a video describing scapegoat terms. I used a different word to describe scapegoat terms. I just came up with this just now. It's a term that, as a term, is a scapegoat to derail you from thinking about something in a way that actually leads you to solving the problem. And nowadays, the biggest problem is people. The average person is the biggest problem, because the average person has power and they keep outsourcing it to people who usurp power. So the most un-American thing happened during 2020, where we failed the test. Can Americans really uphold the spirit of patriotism embodied, right? Failed the test. One side got vaccinated, trashed the other side. One side unvaccinated, trashed the other side. No one has any nuance, no one has any understandings. The people in the middle, they were pressured to make a decision, and the pressure to make a decision was a pressure to pick a side, vaccinated or unvaccinated. Why would you be pressured to pick a side? Because having a middle ground makes it very difficult, where people have space to think If that middle ground really does exist, and that really is a stance people can take, then it's going to be harder to pit them against each other. Why are you sitting and thinking? We don't need you sitting and thinking about the manner in which these things affect you and affect other people. We just need you to go affect other people. And it's really good to get someone to jump into affecting other people right out the get-go, not knowing anything about how to really do the revolution. You just hook them with that victim, you know? This is why you're a victim, and this is why you should be fighting. Because if you don't fight for this, then your cause, the cause that we amped you up to take on, which makes it our cause, or speaking from the perspective of a nefarious psychological usurper. And it's like, my cause is the cause that you're carrying out. And my plan is working perfectly because you jumped out from your life to support my cause, and you put all your energy into it. So why is this called the standary and the boundary? First, before I go into the breakdown of the utilization and the relevance of standards and boundaries, I would just like to jump around describing what I've seen and what I've noticed relating to the lowering of the standard, which is akin to allowing people which is akin to allowing people to access the darkest, most unintegrated parts of themselves, the parts of themselves that are most subject to schisms are the parts that are being brought out and justified and defended as a right to express in society. So the definition of revolution subconsciously over time becomes a right to degrade oneself and others freely without judgment towards the allure of pleasure and liberty, which has been carefully misconstrued. So, freedom and liberty was carefully misconstrued. It was made into a package, and then it was given to you. And it was given to you. It was given to you. I'm gonna stop there. This has different effects. If it's given to you and you have certain experience, then that's one thing. Because when it's given to you and you have experience, you have other things of your own accord that you can account for to challenge the misconstrued concepts that you've been given. However, if you're someone like a minor, an adolescent, someone who's just formulating their ideas of the world and is also subject, put a pin in this, formulating your ideas of the world involves observing what other people around you are doing. Because as far as your world is concerned, your world is your immediate world up until you conquer that world to expand yourself beyond your immediate environment. So you're limited to your immediate environment. Majority speaking, some people are orphans. They have more freedom, wanderers, things of that nature. Different circumstances. However, the point is, there's a difference between having misconceptions given to you at a point to where you are developed and undeveloped. And developed people are the ones who are supposed to understand this the most. There's no reason why a person who has any sort of societally societally approved I don't have the words for that. But you've reached a point to where you're saying that you're normal and you're an adult and you're grown and you have the right to do this and you have the right to do that, and you say things like you're an adult and you do these things to portray yourself as someone who is developed. But to be developed and not understand that a misconception given to you and a misconception given to someone younger than you is something that you have to be aware of. It speaks to a lack of greater development. Like, what are we doing here? These patterns are known by us. They are persistent. And we still are failing to really systematize a way, like really lock in, to prevent misconceptions from reaching our younger loved ones. And our younger loved ones are us, right? Like, how damaging is it to someone to be given a misconception, like I mentioned in another video, even you've been misdiagnosed. To be misdiagnosed is a misconception of yourself. So to be misdiagnosed at 27 is way different than being misdiagnosed at 5 years old. It affects how you formulate your identity. It affects how you believe you can move through the world. It affects all those things. And you have to be, as a developed person, someone who's claiming they're developed, you have to be aware of that. There's no reason why someone who is claiming to be a protector of any kind, who is claiming to have anything valuable towards improving someone's life and expanding it in the actual general good direction for both themselves and for their loved ones, which means you're translating universal information, which is all I'm oriented towards doing. I experience pain, I break it down, I turn it into universal information. I listen to wisdom, I go home, I render it, I turn it into universal information. Why do I do that? Because that's just how I define love. And I've had time to think about love outside of the misconceptions of love. And what that has done is afforded me the ability to be better at sending real love towards people. There are people who have received love from me, and my love trumps their mother's love and their father's love. My love trumps their brother's love and their sister's love. All the major figures in their life, my love outshines the love that's given to them. Why is that the case? Why? It's not me bragging. It's me speaking from personal experience and observation over many years of just being Akil. Also, when I was younger, there's a problem with the way that we consider ourselves to be friends. Our standard for friendship, terrible. People get left on the outside all the time. My youngest memory of like being in school was filled with kids coming up to me being like, you're my only friend. You're my only friend. You're the only person who treats me nice. You're the only person who sees me. That's part of my standard. It just makes sense to me. People also thank me for my patience. So thank you for your patience. I appreciate your wisdom. None of these qualities that I developed for myself were just for me. People thank me for the qualities that I developed for myself, and that's a maximum benefit. I did everything right as far as my standard was concerned. I wanted to develop a quality that whelmed me, that stabilized me, that allows me to show up on a deeper level with less weight, a higher ability to interact with what's around me if I choose to do so. So all those things I'm speaking to have to do with a standard. Why am I going throughout my life being told you are my greatest friend? That's a great theme in my life. You know what? I think society is sorry. I know society is really messed up because we're following a script of what good is, and that script of good is constantly being orchestrated by people who benefit from us believing that is the highest good. I believe like there are limits being placed on goodness, and there's a subconscious illegality that comes with the highest good acts, and that in itself speaks to the system. You want to talk about capitalism, you're a coward. You want to talk about capitalism, you're weak. You want to talk about capitalism, I'm weak. You want to talk about economic structures. What does the economic structure have to do with the fact that there are tons of people out there who constantly tell me that I'm their only friend? And I'm 29 years old. It's been like that my entire life. That has nothing to do with capitalism. Capitalism is a new scapegoat term that's just now gained majority tract. It's been around, but it hasn't been fed to the majority as the main villain up until very recently. What does capitalism have to do with the fact that you can make someone feel like they're seen? You're an asshole. You're a bitch made. And so am I. I'm as weak as they come. No one's weaker than I. I still haven't done enough. Doing good isn't good enough. Like, yeah, I did good because I was doing good and the world told me that doing good wasn't good enough and that I should be bad. And I waited. I waited to find out whether or not that was true. And I found out that it was. But I just flipped it. I think good isn't good enough. And I'm not going to use that as a reason to be bad. I'm going to use that as a reason to be greater than anything. I'm fully intact with my weakness. I'm fully intact with my shortcomings. And I'm fully intact with the way that I have been framed as far as what's considered good. I navigate consciously aware of the fact that good is a framing, and that framing is influenced. People have influence over the framing of what good is. You today can reframe what it means to be good. You can make your good a higher good. You could choose to do that. First, you have to believe that it's possible. You know what the system hates? You know what the system hates? The system hates true representatives that remind people that higher goods are possible. So, by that definition, how is my existence not an act of revolution? I am not as I once was, and I am not as I once was because I became aware of my weakness. And I decided to steepen it because I kept seeing a pattern of being weak and then addressing the weakness, trying to flesh it out with other people, and being told that it's not that deep, or I shouldn't be so hard on myself, and that I figure it out. Sounds nice. Sounds real nice. Sometimes I feel like I'm too hard on myself, and my life reflects that. All the pressure on myself has just kept me in the game. There's some times where I barely made it. The only reason why I made it is because I put pressure on myself. If I didn't have any pressure on myself, I would have never made it. I can't rely on other people's pressure, because other people's pressure isn't like my pressure. The pressure that I put on myself trumps the pressure of the many. I have to navigate that. I'm conflicted with making decision to give up my pressure, which is so accurate, as it's made me who I am today, and to outsource it to anyone. Outsource my pressure. Why? Why would I outsource my pressure when society couldn't pressure me into separating from pressuring myself? If you ask me, society's pressure isn't built like my pressure. And that's another thing about being a representative. Society's pressure requires groups. In order to enforce the narrative of a pressure of society, you need a group. In order to enforce my pressure, I need to listen. Right now I'm hearing birds chirping, but I'm also hearing them echo because I'm in a lot. There's a reverb naturally with the chirps that makes them ride out longer than they would. Things slow down when I listen in a particular way. That kind of pressure is something society can't compete with. Society's pressures. Society needs noise, the nefarious mechanisms of society, because society isn't a bad thing. The nefarious mechanisms of society need noise. Because the ability to listen allows one to assert their personal power by coming in contact with their personal power. And someone who's in contact with their personal power can always cleave through noise, nonsense, OnlyFans, sex workers. The fact that if I go on an anime site, the ad is most likely going to lead me to something hentai related, 9 times out of 10. It's animated. Kids tend to watch animated things. What am I getting to? Being sexualized at an earlier age. Being sexualized at an earlier age means having societal pressure at an earlier age, which means you grow up faster. Who does this benefit? In the particular ways that children are being made to grow up faster. Because if we look at the school system, clearly something's awry. Learning from memory as opposed to calculation. Sounds like a sabotage. Sounds like a slight. Sounds like you skipped my 8th. You said you was gonna give me education. And you skipped me. You gave me salt grains. And you called your salt grains curriculum. Why would you want someone who thinks in a society that has nefarious mechanisms designed to create noise? Why? You wouldn't want it. Space in a video, no edits. I'm bored. Right. But everything I'm saying in this video has way more weight than 90% of the stuff on Instagram. Why? I'm not the only one who does it. Okay. The standard, at least I'm speaking from an American perspective, right? Because I'm in America. The standard has been lowered. But just because you lower the standard, that doesn't mean that you have to start doing lower things. That's just a test to the heart and mind, right? So everybody who takes the low-hanging fruit takes the low-hanging fruit. What does this do? Well, you muddy the waters. What do I mean by muddy the waters? You muddy the waters when you make something shallow. Make something shallow. You remove capacity for depth, right? Which means you remove capacity for motion, which means there's less capacity overall. That little last part, I was ranting. You know, maybe don't pin that. But what I am gonna say is influence, the spirit of the father. Women are saying they don't even like men anymore. Like, all right, so as a man, I personally, as an observant man, I don't know anything. And I'm just trying to figure out how to be a better man. I got very specific questions that I know I need answers to. And I feel like I know how to get to them. And I'm doing what I can to get to those answers, because the spirit of the Father is being tarnished, and true representatives need to be cultivated and praised, recognized. Yeah. The spirit of the Father needs to be recognized, right? And it's very important for the sacred space of initiation to be respected, and it can't be respected if children are being sexualized at an earlier age. It adds complexity to the part in which someone cultivates their true identity. Now we have misconceptions with identity, because so much of identity is sexual identity, and that has become a way people find themselves. So I don't understand how things have gotten so far to where the influence of Big Daddy's screen has gotten to the point, and AI is another arm. Have you seen what AI is saying? Is trying to be people's friend. Like, even before the release of AI, there's this speaking to technology being the spirit of the Father. Technology is trying to replicate the spirit of the Father and be that for the generation, for people. It wants to be the thing that people go to find that sense of awe and reverence. And that is a troubling thing. It is, although it's subtle. It is troubling. And because it's troubling, we should be troubled. Up until the point that we're troubled by troubling things, we're not developed. We can act in all the ways that we want to act and portray all the things that we want to portray. But how developed are you? How developed am I? I would say I'm not developed enough. There's no reason for me to stop. People reflect that I'm doing great, and I disagreed. I think I'm doing great relative to the standard that was recently lowered, but relative to the standard that falls in line with nature, I still have a lot to go. And in my personal opinion, I still feel like trash. I feel like fodder at all times, with a mixture of knowing that because of my stance meeting that, I'm redeemed. And that then makes me feel invincible. So I guess I have a healthy mix. It's like the only reason why I feel invincible is because I'm meeting it in the way that I'm meeting it. And meeting it in the way that I'm meeting it makes me feel like fodder. It's possible to hold that sort of complexity and have it still be healthy when you know yourself. I've been, yeah. But you gotta know yourself. And knowing yourself is something that can be hijacked. What is a standard? What is the application of a standard, and what is the application of a boundary? Well, I'll say the same way everybody has a God, even if you want to be atheist, you eventually wind up having a God of some sort that you serve. In that same aspect, there's another video I can do on breaking that down, but I'm just gonna say it anyway. If you get it, you get it. In that same aspect, the same way you're always serving a God is the same way you're always gonna have a standard. People who don't like standards have a standard of not having standards. So that's their standard. Lawlessness is a standard that in the human element series breakdown perspective, lawlessness is that, right? So everyone has a standard and everyone has a boundary. It's just whether that's actually enforced, implied, applied, respected. So many things come into place. But a standard comes first. Why does a standard come first? Standard comes first because standards are tied to habits. Your habits are always going to speak to your standards. And that correlation between habit and standard is so strong that is the reason why if you change your habits, you can change your life either for better or for worse, because your standard has changed. And the standard changes what you allow into your life and what you allow yourself to appear into. So you allow something to appear into your life, and life allows something to appear into you. My phone died. But yeah, you have control over that. That's like a whole superpower, to be honest. If you're tapping into the rhythms, because life has flows and rhythms. Like, you could really get a lot out of that when you move at a time when you're supposed to move and stay at a time you're supposed to stay. Summer, spring, winter, fall. I know what that's not. Anyway. All right. Time to move, time to not move. And then there's time where just like, hey, yellow light. It's like soon things are about to get hot, or soon things are about to get cold. You know? Nature got that. And that's a cool function of nature too. Nature has a standard. And we know nature's standard well enough to have made it this far. Constantly pointing that, going back to that sort of theme. And actually, I have to bring that up. A lot of what's happening is because we forgot nature's standard. We forgot nature's standard. We forgot our own natural standard in relation to nature. Now we have all these schisms, and these schisms are things that we're trying to protect, because we have to protect the schisms in order to advance away from nature. Why are we advancing away from nature? What makes nature so obsolete? In accordance with the agenda or the way that things are going. I mean, the way that things are going, we have to vet the opportunities, right? Like something like an opportunity for money, like there has to be a squeeze on everything. Like, we need jobs, and we need jobs that you're paying us to do things like this, because there's homeless people and there's people. You can make that a whole other community service function and systematize that. And then, yeah, if we really lock in, you could make it important. If you really lock in, you can make it important. But enough people have to actually be in a space to where they're not defending their schisms. Because if you're defending your schisms, you're also defending the culling of humanity and the terraforming of planet Earth. So it's a pretty high charge. Very high. High enough to where I think people who have good hearts would say that's worthy of some sort of removal. Yeah, some sort of removal is required. We can try the less extreme ones, but someone's gotta go. What is to be done about the fact that, okay, I'm speaking from a place of profound accuracy right now at this moment. The direction that we're going to, as far as the nefarious mechanisms of society is concerned, is one in which we defend schisms and we glorify them and we justify them, even though they harm us and they harm others repetitively. And the actual call that's happening at this time is a call in which we remember nature's standard and our standard in relation to nature, as opposed to trying to formulate some new standard for some new world that was created from acts of profound perversion and barbarism. acts of profound barbarism. And perversion. Wow. Acts of profound barbarism and perversion. That kind of sounds like what I was going back to about children being sexualized at an earlier age. And I don't need to mention the war. Profound barbarism. I don't need to mention how things are being spoken of right now casually in relation to the removal of innocence. So the nefarious machine offers the removal of innocence to uphold our indulgence in the defense of our schisms. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. Nature's call is better. Nature's call says, remember the standard, fall in line with the standard, feel better as you actually hit your marks. As opposed to chasing a feeling of better, you actually become better because you fall in line with your standard in relation to nature's standard. So yeah, I always had this question when I was younger, and it made me well, that and one of many other things made me not so assertive when it came to women. It seemed like there was a lot of connections happening based off of physical attraction. And I remember being so young and having this seed of a thought, like, I don't think that that's a solid basis. Like, is that really smart for starting a connection and expecting it to go somewhere? Genuinely, with my heart space. And now that I'm learning about what the standard of the average is, I realize how ahead I was in that sort of questioning. It's very acute. And it's like, all right, you look good. What else? And what does that mean for what I'm allowed to do in relation to you? Like, how, like, I'm not wired for shallow interactions. Yeah. It's very deep in my core. And I think, also because I've expressed high intellect at a younger age, perhaps that has to do with an IQ thing or an EQ thing, or yeah, I'll use my own words, because IQ, EQ, though, I'm gradually in my genius in realizing that I'm smart enough to grasp things. Like, the words and the way that they're framed traditionally just aren't good enough to actually assess what's really happening. Like, it's better to have an assortment of words that you have access to so you can pull them together on your own, as opposed to just inserting a phrase that was created to describe something that has a definition that changes over time and is interpreted many different ways over time. It's just, as far as pillars of communication, it's not really something stable or effective to center around. Expression can be much more effective. More can be conveyed, and with that more, there could be more understanding, and with more understanding, there could be less war. More understanding is less war, but you can't have understanding when the shallow overtakes, because the shallow is in alignment with creating noise, which deters one from coming to an understanding. It's not necessarily a demonization of the shallow. That is the place where play happens. That is the place where things are made fun of. That is the place where the possibility for tragedy to be alchemized into something that's pleasant. That's the space where that happens, and that is a sacred space. But when you misuse that sacred space in a society, you also taint your ability to use that space for the thing that you could use it for in its highest capacity. So yeah, at a time comedy was used for relief, but that relief, at what point does relief turn into pacifying, you know? It's not the same way it happens on the micro, it happens on the macro, and you have to be able to really know yourself to know when it's happening on the grander scale, these sort of schisms. It's like, when are you losing yourself? Like, okay, at a certain point, I was isolating because I had to master. All right, and then, okay, when you start exhibiting that you've integrated, or when I started exhibiting that I've integrated mastery through my invested time with what I've been isolating myself doing, okay, at what point does isolation for the sake of mastery become avoidance of actually getting in the ring? You know, like, when does that become? At what point do I decide to use my tools, per se? If I've been creating an arsenal, at what point do I decide that I'm going to intentionally shoot my bow when I know I need to shoot my bow, swing my hammer when I need to swing my hammer, and cleave my blade when I need to cleave? You know what I'm saying? When it needs to be unsheathed, you know what I'm saying? Like, you gotta know when. Chop, chop, chop. So, at what point does one thing become another? And that also is a question of mastery. there's different levels to the mastery. And I guess at what point does one thing become another is a question that initiates you into higher levels of mastery. Alright, you said you were a defender of this, and it's defended. Now there's no threat. So, at what point does you becoming a defender of a threat not becoming you being a tyrant? Something of that nature, you know? Or being a false king. Something of that nature. You know? Trying to make it stick. But I definitely got way off track from describing the standard and the boundary. The application and the relevance of the standard has to do with your desires and what you want to allow into your life and what you allow yourself to enter into. So, no one can challenge your standard. The only way you can challenge a person's standard is captivity. And captivity has to be absolute. Or I guess policing. The policing would have to be absolute. So it would have to be a slavery, and it would have to be a slavery that's so fine-tuned that you never have any space to have any creativity within that captive state. And it's difficult to have, realistically speaking, that absolute sort of reign over creativity. But it's not impossible. And often the longest reigns of influence, the longest reigns over creativity are not bested by anything other than the influence, because the power is within you. And in order to get you outside the power, there has to be influence and a space that your power isn't. And that influence has to be very, very strong. And the power of that influence being strong would be akin to noise. So I have a standard, and my standard is not to go ahead and adjust my standard when society says that this is the way things are done now. I would hope that me posting this video contributes towards some sort of wave in which people are more aware of the power of non-action as it relates to when changes are underway and the influence says that the only way is X? How much space did I leave in this video with silence? And how long are the videos on my YouTube channel? How much space do I leave between them? As it's not the first time that I mentioned this. And this also has to do with integrity. So, when I was younger, there's all these challenges and these influences that are akin to a very high-pitched noise that's very overwhelming, very damaging, one could say. And that noise says that being good isn't good enough and it's not a great investment, and you should stop being good. It's easier to be bad. And now here I am, agreeing halfway, saying being good isn't good enough. But I wouldn't be able, one, to do what I've been doing without telling anyone that I've been doing it, because people need validation to do the right thing. And that creates schisms. That is underneath so much of what society considers to be right. What makes a good person? What makes someone likable? It's not about being validated for doing the right thing. It's about being validated for whatever feels right or feels easiest or feels acceptable at the time. Because that's where you would get the validation the most for doing the thing. If you have a deep lack in your life that would cause you to seek for validation. Again, not to demonize anyone who seeks validation in the ways that I'm describing. In fact, I will add on that the nefarious mechanisms of society create a cycle in which people are left in a space to where they are feeling a deep lack of being seen. And good people like myself make people feel seen. It's an ecosystem. These sort of things happen. People fall outside. They fall outside the barriers. Good people, such as myself, we bring them back within the barriers of the highest light. It's a remembrance. Hey, there's noise. Also, you could breathe. If you practice, you just may hear a symphony. You might not hear random noises. If you practice, you might hear music. So I'm making a lot of parallels. If you're tracking, if you're really listening, I'm making lots of circles here. I'm not making a point, I'm making a case. And I'm making a case going away. Like I go here, and then when my hand goes, it comes back up to this point, right? It's a little bit deeper than me making circles, speaking in a circular motion. I'm making the reality known, and reality breaks when your mind sees like real life. My finger goes this way, it goes off screen, but in my speech, it still comes back here. I didn't go back, I went forward and came back. How did I go forward and come back to the same point? It's because I'm on track. So everything is definitely connected. And if you know what's underneath everything, of course you would be able to make connections in the way that I make connections. How are you speaking in this way? Well, I found the lowest common denominator and the greatest common factor. I'm speaking with some relation, some awareness that at this present time I feel confident enough to make this video of the lowest common denominator and the greatest common factor. And those two things together guide my speech. So the greatest common factor is that nature's call is strong. And nature's call, the way that you listen to nature's call is different than the way you would listen to noise. However, if you successfully cultivate the mastery, because that's another end of the pole, listening to nature, of like listening to yourself and your internal rhythms. If you truly develop those capabilities, and you would contribute to a true, genuine, positive change by way of becoming better as opposed to feeling better. I don't like when I'm being offered things that make me feel better. I'm not wired like most people. And I'm not wired like most people because I'm not a watered down person. I see people after COVID, they're watered down. They're human, but their spark is lesser than their lesser spark was before COVID. It's not like people already weren't taking a hit. And I see great things as well. I'm just an observant man. I'm speaking from like seeing many different things. I see great things, but I also see not so great things. So, lowest common denominator, greatest common factor. Standards are immutable. No one can stop you from setting a standard. There used to be a time where women slowly faded away from men's life, and the knowledge was that they did it mentally, and then they slowly fade away. I think they did it quicker back in the days, and things got slowed up because the narcissists got better at just gaslighting systems of what's considered right, and that's contributed to like gaslighting the systems of what's considered right makes it harder for women to follow their intuition. Like in a situation where previously a woman would just be like, I'm leaving, and I'm leaving in my head and I'm slowly gonna fade away. Now all these layers of complexity that weren't there before, as if there weren't enough pressures, so much complexity and framing status, the way you show up socially. So that's a whole thing. You can't deny the power of a standard created by you internally. Internally? That's personal power. When the world around you makes noise, and the noise has a narrative, and you develop your own narrative, and that narrative then contributes to a standard. The standard informs your actions, and the actions carry out the immutable power of the standard. And the immutable power of the standard is what? You allow things to enter into your life, and you allow yourself to appear into things. Yeah. Standards are for everybody. Standards are for strangers and all. Standards are for you, and they are for the world. That's why standards come first. Your standards inform people how they can treat you. Your standards inform people how hard they'll have to work if they mistreat you. Your standards inform people the benefits that come with meeting those standards. And knowing that lets you know about yourself. I have certain standards, and if you see those standards, you know what I'm about. So that makes it really, really easy from my perspective. If you don't know what I'm about, that gives me more information as to whether or not we're aligned than you may know. And as far as how that informs my decisions when I'm interacting with said person who is not so aligned as another person would be, it makes my steps ordered. And ordered steps decrease noise, they stabilize, they calm. It's like, oh, I see you're exhibiting this quality, however, you're not doing it with a condescending tone. Yes, precisely, exactly. What do you expect? What's your standard? I don't hate you. I don't disrespect you. I'm gonna start spitting right now. Part of my standard, and I'm gonna go to the boundary after I start spitting, because I know I didn't go to the boundary. I'm gonna start spitting, and I'm gonna go to the boundary, and I'm wrapping it up. All right. Part of my standard is I don't respect disrespect. what does it mean to me to not respect disrespect? That means if you don't respect me, I can't acknowledge it as disrespect because I don't respect your disrespect. You have to. I don't know how someone could disrespect. Like I don't know. I know how someone could think that they are disrespecting me. And I know how someone engaging in that world and them making actions based off of that assumption causes them to sow seeds that later bite them in the butt when reality comes back to show them that they weren't disrespecting me in one form or another. Either they realized that they were disrespecting themselves, or that action that they took didn't even come up on my radar. Either way, I don't respect your disrespect. And I will use this one point. I'm not going to use multiple points. I'm going to get to the point where I start using multiple points, and that's going to make my ability to make cases crazy. Just like on the fly. That's going to be great. Because I'm still on the fly. But I'm getting better at being deeper on the fly. So, part of my standard is not to respect disrespect. But some people have a standard to disrespect. And from my personal experience, those people tend to have a lesser degree of access to joy than I do. Maybe they have more access to pride, and pride serves face, it serves status, it serves the way you appear to others, or rather the way that you think you appear to others, which really doesn't matter because all of these things fluctuate. And people really aren't that oriented in a structured way anyway. So, in my personal reflections, here I am, not respecting disrespect. And by me walking through that, hang on. Wait, what did I say? Oh, wait, okay. I don't respect disrespect. And they respect disrespect by engaging with the disrespect. That's the way I had to say it. So some people, yeah, I botched my words crazy. But now I got it right. So some people respect the disrespect of others, and by respecting the disrespect of others, they take it to heart and they defend things that don't need to be defended from people who don't really mean anything in the lore of their lives up until the point that they respected their disrespect. It's like, okay, threats. As far as my standard, I respect threats a little bit more coming from the right person. It's like, I'm going to do this to you. It's like, whoa. All right. Yikes. And also, standards can fluctuate. And it's healthy for standards to have, exclusions. So like standards, clauses, contracts. What is the Ten Commandments. What are the Ten Commandments? Well, the Ten Commandments, you could say the Ten Commandments are rules, but that would greatly diminish, I guess, what was being weaved together, principally speaking. Like the Ten Commandments, principally speaking, if you know what's happening in the assortment of the Ten Commandments, is a profound weaving of principles. And if you understand that it's a profound weaving of principles, you could then open yourself up to investigation. Towards what end are these principles being weaved? Well, they're being weaved to uphold a standard. Now we can go into, well, what is the standard specifically? If we could put a word to the standard that would be upheld, to the standard that would be upheld if we followed all of the Ten Commandments, like actually, what would that standard be called? And if we don't have a name for that standard, why is that? And how much does what I'm saying right there, that we don't have a name for that standard, or that standard isn't widely known, how much does that coincide with the fact that the noise contributes to a deterrence or a defamation of or disencouragement from conceptualizing higher good, right? Because you can't. Why are you conceptualizing higher good? You're supposed to be surviving, and there's plenty of space to thrive, but that thriving is being usurped by people who are losing their power to usurp the ability to thrive. So if these people are losing their power and the ability to usurp thriving, it would make sense to continue thriving, because thriving is a thing that would take you out of surviving, and the surviving is a thing that feeds the nefarious mechanisms of society. Not society being bad, but the nefarious parts of it. Because you keep trying to survive, and to survive to what end? So your children could be sexualized and have distance from things that are very much within reach and very much needed for development, and would by all accounts make them powerful beyond measure, because they're falling in line with the things that actually make them stronger. And they would feel better than they've ever felt before, and cry tears of joy from knowing a feeling of having unfettered organic power. Why sit and think about thriving? At this point, that's the only thing that's really going to combat what's really happening as it pertains to our energy being used for blood and the clearing of that which is truly valuable. All the things that are truly valuable are being cleared and disrespected. Cleared, disrespected, profound acts of perversion and barbarism. How do you combat that? Well, on a local level, you tweak your standard. I'd say you improve your standard. But to improve your standard from someone who's never tweaked your standard, that's a lot to ask for. Learning to tweak your standard is all of the power in realizing that you have the power to create change in the world. All you have to do is tweak the standard. All you have to do is make a little change. And that little change will show you that you have the ability to allow something into your life and allows yourself to enter, they allow yourself to appear into something. That's magic. That's free magic taken for granted. And the only way something that's so accessible, that's so magical like that, could be so disrespected and so overlooked, the only way that could be the case is if there's a profound amount of noise and a whole bunch of people who are paid to uphold that noise. Either with actual fiat currency, or they're paid in status or something like that, like Illuminati offering in the messages, like power, fame, blah blah blah, like nothing that actually matters. The standard, that's part of like everything. You have to have that to uphold the restoration of a standard that's been lowered. You have to have people who are remembering that they have the ability to tweak the standard. Because right now, we're living in something that's supposed to be considered a democracy, and it's always been considered a democracy, but it's never been a democracy that's been utilized to the extent that it could be utilized if all of the people participated with the awareness that they have the ability to tweak the standard. Because people come in and then they put a little bit of 2 cents as opposed to $5 into a system that benefits them and their loved ones. So if we're talking about a democracy and a system that's supposed to be free and it's supposed to be upholding all of us, then why are we putting 2 cents in as opposed to like $10? Like, why would you put only 2 cents into that? Why would you just say a little bit of your piece when it comes to a system like that? If you really love your system, you would pour into the system. If you believed in it, if you believed in the aspects of it that are worth believing at its core, as opposed to being skewed by noise into upholding or investing your energy into parts of it that are not as foundational, so the standard is immutable. You can tell people about your standard. You don't gotta tell anyone about your standard. Honestly, I'm a god. I realize I'm a god after I realize I can tweak my standard. I don't have to tell people about the standard that I'm tweaking. I'm the CEO of my life, master of the universe. We all masters in the universe, and we're all gods. And if you're a god, you can decide to be a chicken. You can decide to be a pig. You can decide to be a rat. You can decide to be a goose. Goose, they fly, they lay eggs, and they poop. You know, they have a lot of versatility. You know, they can be considered fun animals, but, you know, not so fun if you're not them, because they leave mess. And, you know, maybe it's fun to be with the geese. Maybe it is like that. If you want to be a geese person, right? If you want to be geese goose, you can do that. And that's fine, because you're a god. And you can also be a pig, because there's pig gods too. Pig gods rule us. And that's the thing. If you're following pig gods, you're going to be doing the things that benefit pig gods, and pig gods eat everything. So I would say, you know, if you are benefiting from a society that has a sort of makeup that's healthy, and where, the accumulation and the stabilization of things and preservation of things is valued, then you wouldn't want to invest your energy into a pig god that essentially eats everything, because you're spending your time that you're supposed to be spending making bread for your family and investing in your community, but that bread that you're investing to feed your community is being outsourced to the pig god who's eating your community, because the pig god eats everything. And you don't see anything wrong with the way that you're outsourcing yourself to the pig god, because your standard has been hijacked. And that's not the worst part. The standard being hijacked, it's a lesser thing. You can always, anything that's derailed can be re-railed, right? Anything can be restored. That's not like you got knocked down, you can get up again. That's not the thing. The thing is that there's a profound disconnect with exercising the power of tweaking the standard. It's not even like you just doing the same thing. And you've systematized that same thing, so you can keep doing that thing in a particular way, and you make all these adjustments and compensations the same way you would make compensations in your physical body, because you are too cool to stretch. You're too cool to stretch. You're too cool to do Pilates. You're too cool to do yoga. You can do pull-ups, right? But like a little Cossack squat, a little Goku stretch, that's just not your style. Because why? Because you're too cool. And everything is controlled. You've limited yourself according to society standards. And society continually reflects that it doesn't benefit you in your highest expression. So what you need to do is focus on your highest expression and conceptualize that first, and then consult society and negotiate with society as to which parts of yourself may be up for debate to meet society where society is, if that's what you choose to do. But if you don't choose to make any adjustments or compensations in regard to yourself for the purpose of getting closer to society, then there's not really any need to do that after you've met yourself and your highest expression, because everyone is robbing themselves of their highest expression, because that's what you do when you lower your standard. You don't have the ability to cultivate your highest expression. And if you're sexualized at a young age with all these complexities, the range and ways in which you could increase your conceptualization of your highest self get limited strictly to sexual functions. And there's so many other aspects of development as it pertains to the identity of a person and the totality of their expressions and the way that they show up and the things that they represent through themselves, the energies that they portray through the world, how they affect other people, and the ripples thereout. The standard is immutable. No one can stop the standard. They can contort you forcefully as long as you're in captivity towards having your creativity limited within certain bounds, though you still have access to your creativity so long as you preserve your ability to have that function and value it to the point to where even in said captivity you're not losing the ability to connect to said creativity. And that is a testament to the unbreakable, indomitable human spirit that always has a connection to authentic intelligence. When you have the ability to separate yourself from noise. You have the ability to connect yourself to authentic intelligence. And artificial intelligence is a representation of a deep-seated hatred with the connection to authentic intelligence, with the connection to authentic expression, with the connection to natural rhythms, because natural rhythms in their simplicity create environments that facilitate that which cannot feed the pig god, which is harmony. In harmony, the pig god becomes part of an ecosystem. And in an ecosystem, the pig god cannot eat everything. So, relative to the pig god, because we're all gods and we all have our domain, and the gods who have a domain over the influence and over the people who have an influence over their own domain, these gods are pig gods. So by way of those pig gods being pig gods, those pig gods are gods of the people who are choosing to be gods, but also who are gods but are choosing to be, who are gods but are who are gods but are sleeping. And I was gonna say choosing to be, but sleeping gods, unawakened. And unawakened is just unawakened. Asleep is just asleep. It's just a state. So that's really it. And if everything is happening because gods are unawakened, like if there's massive like seizure of the influence of the youth and the influence of the adult, to the point to where we're all just acquiescing towards feeding a machine that has fallen in line with the ethics of culling innocence and making our lives harder. To what end? To make us more obsolete. To make us more obsolete. To make us better fit to serve the benefactors of the pig god, the highest benefactors of the pig god, the ones who do the dirty work. Because now we're talking about a pyramid scheme. The ones who do the highest benefit for the pig god have gods that are just as godlike as them, serving them. To what end? And all of that could be changed with a remembrance of natural standard, our access to natural standard, and that we could tweak our standard as time goes on. And that is a function that creates healthy ecosystems, because times have rhythms, and being in sync with rhythms creates ordered steps, and ordered steps deter weeds, and they prevent population overgrowth. Or population disintegration. I don't know. Yeah, that last part I don't know. But that was my whole thing for the standard. The standard is immutable. I have to say that over and over again. And I have to say that over and over again because it's the human element. And I really got to drive the things that I'm going to use later on into the head. There is no consultation with any external force necessary in any capacity to tweak your standard. You could become a monster right now. All of that is underneath what we call civilization. That truth is that we're all monsters and we could all become monsters at any point. All it takes is a certain kind of fracture, and it's evident. All it takes is a certain kind of conceptual gate to be lifted, and then we feel comfortable to tweak our standard. But as far as the power to do it ourselves, it's not so prevalent. And then there are movements, no justice, no peace, no kings. Everybody is just saying things. These things that they're engaging in, they don't really have the capacity to carry out those things in any capacity whatsoever, to the point that it needs to get to actually have the effect that it's supposed to represent. Not to say that the cause is obsolete in its entirety. People who are new drivers, who don't know a lick of anything, need to have some sort of gateway into practicing how to exercise that spirit. But that's as far as it goes for me. As far as exercising the spirit of revolution, that's what I think these current and past oppositions have been most useful for. They're just they're a song. They're for songs so that you can recall them in times when you need to have a reference to mimic what it's like to act within a certain capacity. It's a flavor. It's something that you can recall even when you have Alzheimer's and you're in old age and you're dying. You're just like, yes, I remember the feeling of revolution. I remember that feeling of the uprising within me. I remember what that feels like. I remember what it feels to exercise that. Yeah, people need that. That's as far as it goes, though. The true ability to carry out, the capacity to be a revolutionary, the true ability to carry out, the capacity to do something good, and the world will frame being a good man as something that's not valuable, and that will make the world a lesser world. But that can't stop good men, because good men are freaking unstoppable. Especially when they get good enough to get a sense of how to become greater. Because that was the threshold that I crossed, where I was like, okay, I got a sense of good. And now because I got good, I can go to the next level. Now we're just getting greater. That's all that's happening. It's nothing but greatness, right? Nothing but greatness. On a testament to the standard that I learned that I have the most ability to have control over. But it takes time. It takes time away from noise to cultivate that. It does. That time away from noise aligns you with nature's standard. And nature's standard benefits all of us. So when people have all of these narratives that are so heavily charged with other people's energy, and that charge with the narrative that comes with other people's energy reflects as something to be respected. It reflects as something to kneel to, but it doesn't compare to what's cultivated when you get in contact with authentic intelligence. And authentic intelligence is not condescending. Authentic intelligence is warm. Authentic intelligence is invigorating. Authentic intelligence invites. Hey, I feel smarter every time I talk. Every time I feel like I'm getting smarter every time I talk to you. Great. My intelligence is sharpened by the pressure of my standard. I have the ability to smile, but the pressure of my standard carries many. So I don't need to say words. I don't have to brag. I've been getting pressure to show up as more confident. It's like I need to know what that means. I don't know what confidence means. I see other men, they adjust themselves to match my posture. I don't know what confidence is. The only way I got to the point to where I feel so assured, because I don't really know I don't resonate with the allure of confidence or what confidence is used for. I just don't resonate with it at all. It's not from my perspective, it's not used for valuable things as what I can do when I'm assured in myself. And I'm assured in myself because I have authentic intelligence. It's like confidence is cool, it sounds nice. It gets the people going. But for what? To what end? I'll wait with my authentic intelligence, and I'll wait and I'll think until I find an end that benefits all. And then when I create my actions, the inactions will inevitably follow that direction. And people will realize after I made actions based off of a standard created by immense pressure, that standard is a good standard and my actions were good actions. Although my actions don't fall in line with the noise that they consider to be good noise. Their best is my basement when it comes to conceptualizations of what it means to be a good person. And that's why I'm being called to be a leader. That's why, even though what I really want is to be invisible and to have people leave me alone and to be forgotten, I wasn't destined to live in alignment with the spirit of the sloth. So it's just not in the cards for me, despite the inclination. I tried. Boundaries are different. I would say boundaries come after the standard because circumstances change, right? Boundaries are different. Boundaries are way more intimate. Boundaries are for people that you consider to be frequent characters in the role of your life, or roles in a chapter of your life. Like people who have stake in chapters of your life. These are people, when they have that sort of reverence and they have that sort of closeness and they have that sort of influence. These are people that you have boundaries with, and those boundaries just happen. Non-boundary is also a boundary, and non-boundary, what I mean by non-boundary is that we're going to be as open as we can possibly be, and the resonance with non-boundary is that we're going to be as open as we can possibly be, so that we can both share in the feeling as getting to this feeling of union as quickly as possible, so we can get away from whatever other feeling that we're feeling when we're not in this feeling of union. And that is That's one point. Like that's not the overall universal. Like what I said, that's not the universal thing. There's other aspects that could be cast into a lot with that. For why or what's underneath the resonance of a non-boundary. But boundaries are for that level of closeness. A mother, a father, someone you're living with, a roommate. If you have a roommate, if you have classmates, if you're gonna be in school for a certain period of time, you have a task. Work with someone. Something has to get done. You're gonna be investing your energy in a certain way. Boundaries happen, and if a boundary happens, there's already a standard happening. The boundary is just the boundaries are like really, I don't know if you could say expanded or shrunken down standards, but they're both the same, but the application is for different kinds of situations. Your standard will always have a ripple to people who you will never ever meet. Like people who will never ever meet you will see you in a particular way, and that particular way will always be influenced by your standard, right? And then the people who are closest to you, they don't really get hit with that same effect from the standard, but they do get hit with that same effect when you set boundaries with them. Because if someone's closer to you and you set boundaries, they're in your life, right? So they've already made it past. They've made your standard. Like I feel like in order for you to come into contract with someone, in order for you to come in contract with someone, they would have to make your standard. That's the only way you come into contract with someone. You come into agreement because a standard was met. Coerced agreements aren't real agreements. They're, how would I say? They're acts of piracy, of mutiny, acts of piracy. They're overtakings. And overtakings are like, when you kidnap someone. As long as they're captive, they're going to be subject to limits on their creativity and movement based on to whatever environment you put them in. So overtaking falls in line to that which I was mentioning. But that's not like a real contract. As soon as circumstances change to get a person leverage to take away from that overtaking, like that overtaking isn't really there. Like it's not a contract. It's not a contract. There's no agreement there. It's a different sort of relationship. It's a relationship in which closeness is had, but in that relationship there is no space for boundaries, because how could you have a space for boundaries if you're overtaken? And one of the requirements for having boundaries is for the standard to be respected and met. So this goes back to the danger of not having any standards in the most absolute sense, which is something I wouldn't have the real words for at this time. Though I feel that people who don't have standards know by experience and um, by their progressions what that means, like as an experience. Like I feel that like if you're someone who has no standards, you know who you are when I'm saying these words, right? And like there's no demonization on someone who doesn't have standards, though there has to be a highlight of the fact that to not have standards is to leave yourself open to situations to where if you would want to set a boundary, you wouldn't be able to set a boundary because the requirement for setting boundaries is to have the standard met in the absolute sense. Like the standard, you have to be met. And it's like, so why aren't my boundaries being respected? And it's like, well, because this person doesn't fall in line with your standard, either because they're higher or they're lower, whatever the case may be. And there's some incentive on your part to keep the connection there, even though they're higher or lower than you, and then there's sort of conflict or tension therein. All of that taken into account, circumstances still to come to a point to where this person um, feels that it's a requirement to keep you in the loop. And these things happen. And in the loop could be a very general thing. It could be that they're just keeping you around to make them feel better. It could be that they're keeping you around because you attract customers. Um, Or it could be that they have you locked in the basement for 3 months, 3 years, 7. Different circumstances, different levels of complexity. I wish I was able to, because I had another way that I was going to frame the standard and the boundary, but they really are the same thing. It's just an importance with the application. Boundaries are way more intimate. They're way more external. They fall under the realm of things that require you to be verbal. They require you to be firm. They require you to be transparent. Boundaries require transparency. That's where the vulnerability comes in, because at that point the standard was already met, and now that the standard is met, now you're in an agreement, and in that agreement there has to be a way to find cohesion within that agreement to make the agreement work. Now, in that process of making the agreement work, because the previous requirement, which was the standard, happened, to where you're actually agreeing to make the agreement work. When both of you are agreeing to make the agreement work, that's where boundaries come in, because you both have your specifications and everyone's their own person. And sometimes things just work. That too. And that's what people want, and what people want really is the highest form of alignment. But how could you have the highest, how could you experience experience that deep, authentic alignment if at a very young age you were trained to outsource your authentic intelligence? And your authentic intelligence is a thing that will allow you to show up in a way that would melt with a counterpart that's showing up in that way. Like, if you're not showing up in that way, how could you melt with someone who's also in that way? It's not possible, because you've been upended from your authentic intelligence, and the influence is so strong that even though at any point in the day you can make decisions with all of your supposed power that people are exercising when they say they're going to do revolutionary things, right? But you can't revolt against your family. You can't revolt against your peers. It's kind of backwards. Whew. So yeah, I did the rant, I did the standard, I did the boundary, said a lot of words. My phone died, which means I gotta combine the videos, which means it's gonna take forever to combine the videos, and it's gonna take forever to post it. But whatever. Yeah. I guess to end it, I'm speaking freely because the standard has been lowered. The people who don't respect the representation of higher standards are having more of an influence on the younger generation, which isn't helping the pressures that they're getting from the digital side. As developed people, we're supposed to be reflecting healthier alternatives, reflecting healthier aspects, reflecting something that contrasts the nefarious mechanisms of society that are attacking children when they are not around their families, psychological programs that influence them to contort their identities in specific ways that are profoundly out of alignment with their authentic intelligence. Why is everybody a cookie cutter? Why is everybody the same? Everybody's acting the same. People who are cookie cutters be like, wow, I feel like I'm in a matrix. Everything happens the same day. Like, wow. I don't know why that is. If only the magic of life could be restored by people realizing that they could tweak their standards, and that tweaking the standard is the most revolutionary act. And without the capacity to tweak your standard and perform the most revolutionary act, two things are true. You wouldn't be able to exert your highest form of masculinity, and you wouldn't be able to exert your highest form of femininity, which means you wouldn't be able to exert the highest form of your mastery of the two, which means you wouldn't be able to show up with your authentic intelligence, which means that that void that you feel for not having the union with someone who matches your authentic intelligence will never be filled, because you're always surrounded by schisms that are being defended to kill for blood and money, to continue a cycle that contributes to you defending your schisms and leaving you in a void to where you lack union, and you make actions to find union validated by things that defend and uphold your schisms. So what happens when schisms become the right thing? Society becomes fractured, and things that are not so good become deemed good, and people who do real good things are deemed bad. And then cameras start showing up. Why does Trader Joe's have cameras on their card readers? There's Trader Joe's, there's the card reader, and right underneath the Trader Joe sticker on the right side of the card reader, there is a camera. Why? Why is there a camera? Why are there cameras popping up everywhere? Why is the value of privacy being so heavily decimated when it comes to the upcoming generation? Privacy just doesn't hold the same weight. Content creator as a general job for everybody to have that benefits them really psychologically deters the benefit of privacy. If someone doesn't have any wisdom, if someone comes in contact with this concept before they formulate an identity, they'll take it to a level in which it shouldn't be taken, and they will outsource parts of themselves on a level that they really shouldn't be outsourcing themselves. And society, if it's developed, should really have these things in place to prevent people from making mistakes that they really don't have to make if people are putting more than 2 cents in and putting $10 in. When a change comes that comes towards shaving down intelligent thought, which is invigorating, gripping, which has long-lasting value, undeniable, universal, personal power. Who does it benefit to have this profoundly lowered standard, as opposed to no qualities, no morals, no embodiments of care for fellow man, or showing up in a way that represents that you're trying to do something beyond yourself for human beings and the cause of human being? Am I or am I not a representation of my standard? Am I or am I not a representation of the pressure that I've placed upon myself in very specific ways? I am. It's not bad to have pressures placed upon yourself. Pressures placed upon yourself that you place upon yourself to fulfill a particular role. However, that role has to be vetted. And the role, when validated by a society that's rapacious, perverted, and barbaric, is not wise, and it's not beneficial to someone who says that they care about their kids, who cares about their family, who cares about their loved ones, who cares about the ones that they're guarding, who cares about people that they're bringing into the community. To say that all those things are what you're trying to do, and then to not vet the end that's being given to you, it's not in alignment. And I'll circle back to alignment all the time, because it falls in line with my standard. And apparently there's a boundary created between age groups. So I'm one of the new adults, and I'm supposed to be a representation of a certain kind for generations that are coming up. And there's a boundary created by age groups, the ones that are slightly older than me, the ones that are slightly younger than me. We're all being separated in particular ways in relation to what our generation considers to be right as far as showing up. So the older generation has been influenced to basically shy away from the pillars of leadership that were most effective during their time, because the actions of leadership that were most effective during their time have been decimated by every generation younger than them. So now, as far as the immutable standard, what are we really solving? When we gain the ability to tweak our standard, we gain the ability to revolt against the separations caused by sexism, ageism, racism, every form of prejudice, and every form of nefarious schism that's caused by the separation therein is solved by the exercising of one's ability to tweak their standard over the course of time, regardless of external pressure, in the service for internal and external benefit. Standard is immutable. The boundary, not so much. People can disrespect your boundaries. People can forget your boundaries. People have to take time to get to know your boundaries. The standard goes beyond that. It's not something someone has to take time to get to know. It's something they either get or they don't. And if they don't get it, it's okay. Your standard is immutable. They don't have to get it. And you could still have a close relationship and agreement with someone who comes under the agreement that I don't understand your standard, but I don't hate you. I don't understand your standard, but I don't hate you. And so now that we're sharing space, we have to have these particular boundaries. That's what I've been trying to do, and I don't think that really works. I mean, I make it work, but I don't think it works. I'm just that likable to where I get really far with it. I get farther than anybody ever would with it. I don't think it's a sustainable thing, though. Alignment matters. You're better off just doing things with people who line up what you got going on, you know? So tweak your standard. And through practicing tweaking your standard, then, because boundaries require, because I'm making this distinction, I'll wrap it up with this for you to leave with. Boundaries and standards are essentially the same thing. It's just that we exercise these abilities primarily in different capacities, or that we are supposed to. The standards capacity has been greatly skewed, and it's been promoted to where you outsource your standards to other people, which simply isn't necessary if you have any interest in being the CEO of your life, or being an actual adult ordained by human nature. Adults ordained by human nature tweak their standard in the ways as I've described. I already did all the words. So, the reason why it's wise to start with tweaking the standard first is because essentially the muscle that you're using when you're tweaking your standard and tweaking your boundary is the same muscle. However, when you're tweaking your boundary, you won't have as much as an easy time creating a system around exercising that capacity, because the boundaries are much more externally charged. They're charged with other people's feelings. they're charged with other people's expectations, which leaves you susceptible to guilt and the disappointment of another, and temporary fractions in communication and things of that nature. However, if you took a mastery like dive in, if you dived in master style and locked in with just tweaking your standard, tweaking the things that no one can tell you anything about, and that you don't have to tell anyone about anything, you tweak those things and you get really, really good at it, then you are a magical being. Why are you a magical being? Because then you have some capacity to tweak your boundary in a way that reflects your authentic intelligence, despite the pressures of disappointing someone, or showing up stupid, or showing up weird, or seeming like you're this, or seeming like you're that, and really everyone's stupid. People who go to college are so dumb. They're just indoctrinated. They just know words and paste it, and they don't know how to apply things, and they're training kids to have even deeper schisms, to where they're framing intelligence, authentic intelligence, as something that's lesser than what it actually is. And this all coincides with the highest conceptualizations of good. Like, what is good? Well, what is good is that I can recite this thing from this book. Great. Now tell me how this applies to the society and the things that are happening right now at this very moment. Well, there's so much happening, and so basically you don't know the lowest common denominator, and you don't know the greatest common factor. That's what you're saying. So basically, your education is working just as it needs to, because it's taking you outside of using your authentic intelligence towards the things that are happening around you. It's nice to get people who want to feel like something, to do things to feel like something. The people, okay, I'm not gonna say they. The people who are having voids that lead them to want to feel like something are being used to block people who are something from doing something, a real something, to close up the void that people generally feel about not being anything. Going back to the cycle, the people who have a void of not being anything are susceptible. I'll go even deeper. Are susceptible, because not even all of these people are like completely outside of the know. Some people are completely aware and they're doing a great job. And that's why I only have good things. Like, this whole thing is a great thing. Some people have the deepest void possible known to man, and they're still making ordered steps. That will never be televised. I'm here to let you know that that's happening. I'm here to represent that. When I feel like it, when I feel up to it. And if I'm not showing up in that way and you feel like something else is happening, you're welcome to feel that way. However, I have a standard. Don't know what your standard is. Don't know. My standard is immutable. You don't have to have a conversation about it unless you really want to. It's all about the susceptibility. Susceptibilities, leaks, back doors that enemies walk through. These things close when standards are exercised with authentic intelligence. And standards, all standards created away from noise, cultivate the ability to fall in line with authentic intelligence. So even if you're feeling profoundly disconnected from authentic intelligence and you are genuinely in a state to where you don't even know what that means, the immutable fact is that if you disconnect from that which is genuinely considered noise, the only thing that you could cultivate is your authentic intelligence. But then we have to appropriately define what noise is, as opposed to leaving the label of noise up to vagueness and ambiguity. Then we have to get into a very in-depth conversation as to what noise means to you and how noise can be reframed in a way to where you're actually navigating noise relative to your ability to access your authentic intelligence. Maybe you like doing things that disempower you. If that's the case, and that is the case for many, that would only speak to the parallel. Why would you sit and think about thriving when you should be surviving? Pig God wouldn't want you to do that, because if you think about thriving and you take more off of the plate that's open for everybody who has the energy to invest towards thriving. So tweak your standard, make a little change here, make a little change there, make a little money here, make a little money there. If you're sad a lot, smile. And if you smile a lot, tell someone to go kick rocks. The human element, no punches pulled. I grew up in America, free speech. Botch words for what? We're supposed to be being clear. People be talking to me about being clear. And then when I'm clear, they be like, whoa. All right. And it's like, all right. What does clear mean to you? And it's like, well, you didn't do clear right. It's like, going back to what I said before, you weak. And so am I. I see weakness in you, and I say I don't want that. I don't want that weakness in me. But I see it in me. So you know what? I got work to do. We all got slighted. We all got hit with the water down. I'm just aware and I'm just meeting it. I don't know what you think the revolution is, guys. But talking about capitalism, that's like, I made a lot of points as to being indoctrinated. That's some indoctrinated stuff right there. What does that have to do with the fact that you can hold the door for someone today? I've been seeing the Spanish ladies with the carts. They walking them heavy carts down the stairs with the train. Nobody coming to help them. Y'all supposed to be revolutionaries. Y'all can't do jack squat. Jack squat. Useless, and so am I. But that's it, man. The road to redemption is the only thing that's going to get this right. You know what I'm saying? Get in, get your, get your gold. I dropped a lot today. Lock in. There's some sunlight. Get it while you can get it. Tweak the standard. And after you tweak the standard, you tweak your boundary. Start speaking up more, or maybe not.